Hi, Lee. Welcome to your show.
Welcome to your show, Savannah.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling just fine today.
Nice.
You?
It's getting warm in here. I just noticed.
Well, yeah, maybe so.
Feeling nice and toasty in the studio.
Welcome back to the studio.
Welcome back to the studio. Lee, how are you feeling about your New Year's resolution so far?
I don't make New Year's resolutions. I try to lean into new practices and habits, though.
I knew you wouldn't be a resolutions person.
Yes, yeah. They never worked for me. But reviewing the kind of human being I'm trying to be and then doing like an inventory of habits and practices has always been helpful. And so currently, I don't know, and I like the idea of doing mini experiments to see how you like it. Mm-hmm. So we're in the midst of doing a mini experiment with changing our schedule so that we're setting the alarm clock for 5:30 and at the Y by 6:10 and doing exercise first thing in the morning, Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. And it's great so far.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I love it.
That's a big change.
It's a big change. It allows me to be psychologically more at ease, I think, through the whole day because I'm not thinking, when am I going to get to the Y? When am I going to get to the Y? And then I don't feel badly about myself at 6 o'clock when I'm still working.
If you haven't conquered it.
Yeah, that's right. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big shift.
Any New Year's resolutions for you or new habits?
I knew about the mini experiment thing because you said the subtext was mini experiment. And I was like, that's nice. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No resolutions for me other than I'm doing a half marathon in April.
Yes. How's your training coming?
Going great. I'm on week 8. I'll be ready by March, so I'll be way ahead of schedule.
We haven't talked about this, but my youngest son is also doing his first half marathon and going to be in that half marathon, I think. I need to put y'all together so you can run together.
You're kidding me.
No, you haven't met Ben, I don't think.
I haven't met Ben. Yeah. He's doing a half marathon in Nashville.
I think that's the one he's doing.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
I'm beyond thrilled. Yeah, I just did 7 miles on Saturday.
Huh.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm halfway there.
Yeah, very good.
Getting close.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well, Lee, I wanted to read a couple of reviews that we got over the Christmas break. Yeah, only the good ones. And then I want to talk about one that was actually a phone call that you're going to be interested in.
Huh.
Okay, the first one is from MC and said, I came for Savannah's teaching style. I did not reread this before I did because I would not have normally said that.
I came for Savannah's teaching style.
I guess for me.
How about that, Savannah?
I know. I stayed because the subtext feels like a long missing corner of the internet. Thoughtful, informed, and refreshingly calm in a world that is usually shouting at each other from their keyboards.
I hope that MC still thinks that after I got on a little rant on the last episode.
I love it. You're like, go crazy. I love it. This next one is Bay Flizzle. I'm into that.
It's who?
Bay Flizzle.
Bay Flizzle.
I don't know what that is, but I'm into it.
Hi, Bay.
The title is Lee Sounds Like Fred Rogers.
Is that a compliment or is that an insult?
But that's not the only reason why listening to this podcast feels like stepping into an adult version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Fun, honest, researched, prudent, respectful. Savannah and Lee are teaching us how to be in conversation, how to be discerning, and how to be neighborly. Highly recommend.
Well, thank you for that.
I really love that review.
It's a very sweet review.
And then the third one I wanted to talk about was this guy that my first internship in college was in graphic design. Remember how my dad wanted me to have like an actual job. So I took this internship in graphic design in Nashville, and one of the maybe like UX designers or something? User experiences?
Yes.
I think that maybe that's what he did at the time, but he was an adult and had a job there. His name is Luke. Luke is a fan of No Small Endeavor, and his family has kind of been around this world for a long time. And he called me after our episode on AI.
So you worked with him?
Yeah. But we're still friends.
Okay.
And this has been over 10 years, by the way, that my internship was. He called me after our AI episode and highly disagreed with our take.
Oh.
And I wanted to give him the space to disagree.
Well, good. What did Luke have to say about that?
So Luke is obviously in tech, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't remember what we said in the AI episode, but
just that we were not excited about some of these.
Oh yeah, so that was the one about the AI artists and so forth. Yes,
exactly. And Luke basically talked about how, 10 years ago, people would pay him to build a website, but now AI does that. And so people don't pay him to do that anymore. And he's just had to adapt and get over it and generate all of these other skills in order to survive. And I don't know if he's going to love the way that I'm representing this. So if he doesn't, please let me know, Luke. But he basically was talking about why do we only care now that it's with artists? He was like, this has been happening in every other sphere for so long.
Because we didn't care for the web designers.
Yeah.
Then it falls flat when we care for artists.
Yes. That's basically what he was saying is this has been happening in so many spheres for so long. And you basically have to adapt or die. Yeah.
Well, so how did you respond?
Oh, my job was just to be empathetic and listen.
I see.
And I said, thank you so much for all of your feedback. I did call out a couple of times, don't you see how this is different than what we were saying? Yeah. And he did agree that there were some differences. Yeah. But then he said, that really intense quote where it's like they came for the blank, but I don't know. It was like talking, and then they came for me and no one was there to help. He was basically like, you guys did that version of it where it was like the artists were the last ones. So tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, I would say that I guess I understand how someone in that field could feel that, and maybe I can see how they would take that away from what we said in that episode. However, I think we probably talked about Jacques Ellul in that episode.
Yes, we did.
And if you take Jacques Ellul seriously, it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with the rise of ChatGPT. It has to do with especially the rise of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of technique, which is the ensemble of means arranged in the most efficient way possible without regard to ends. That is, you're doing whatever you're doing in the fastest way possible without asking why. And that describes our world. And AI describes that on ultra steroids. And so, in my mind, this is not a new critique. This is an old critique. At least, he was writing that back in the middle of the 20th century. And well before him, people were critiquing these kinds of things about the modern world. And so it's just more what AI gives us in many ways is a condensation, if you will, of some of the greatest ills of the modern world that we're going to have to grapple with in new ways. And again, that doesn't mean I don't use AI. I do use AI. I use it a lot. But it raises all sorts of questions. And so I think if we're not grappling with the questions and asking in what way are we going to use it and in what way are we not going to use it, how do we be honest about what we're using? Because I think that was one of our critiques is that you have
the lack of transparency.
Lack of transparency out there around it. And I'm also starting to read a philosopher named Shannon Valor, who I think has written the best stuff I've read on AI and ethics so far. And the sorts of virtue problems and character problems and the fact that large language models are simply prediction machines. All they do is reflect back to us what human culture has produced so far. And to that degree, lacks imagination or lacks what Christians would call hope, right? A theological notion of hope. And so that's really problematic, right? Because it feeds back to us our biases. It's also the fact that it's not concerned with factuality and truth. It's concerned with giving you a plausible answer. And so there are all sorts of things to be troubled about with AI, while also acknowledging it's an amazing technology. And there are some use scenarios that, of course, we're going to do, right? So, yeah, I find all these conversations fascinating, and I'm glad for Luke listening and giving us some pushback.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
When he called, it was great pushback. I remember literally saying, I wish you were on the show, because he could have pushed back in the moment. Because I think for me, where you've thought about it more robustly, for me, the first time I had seen the real life implications is in my field, like the creative arts field. And obviously I've thought about it maybe from like a more political standpoint, but not really in terms of people's work.
Yeah.
And what he described, where he was like, this technology has been affecting my work for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I think was a good check for me to realize people have been dealing with this.
Yeah.
And it's not just like...
Oh, and it's having a huge impact upon higher education, upon education generally, but especially maybe higher education on writers. And so, yeah, it's a tsunami coming in.
It is a
and
tsunami
we haven't the slightest idea yet what it's going to do to us.
But shout out to Luke.
Shout out to Luke.
We
Thank you,
love
Luke.
a good phone call, 20 minutes in and out,
Yeah.
good confrontation. Let's get started with the show.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
And I am Lee C. Camp.
Hey, if you like what we're doing and don't have our number where you can just call us and tell us what you think, do us a favor by following and rating us wherever you listen. Leave a review, give us 5 stars, hype us up. If you want to watch full episodes, you can find that on YouTube and Spotify. You can also follow the show at The Subtext Show, me at Savannah_Locke, and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, just DM us on Instagram at The Subtext Show. All right, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Have you watched Stranger Things?
I have watched several seasons of Stranger Things. What was the last season? What number?
5.
I think I've watched the first 4 seasons, maybe the first 3. I don't remember.
Oh my goodness.
I can't ever remember really what I've watched and how much of it I've watched, but
if I throw something out there, will you try to remember it?
Maybe I can try to remember. I'm willing to play your game.
Do you remember anything about a Russian mall?
A Russian mall? MALL? I remember stuff about an American mall.
Yeah, but like the Russians in the mall?
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't that 3 or 4? Was that 4? That was 3. Dang it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, do you remember anyone going to Russia?
No, I do not.
Okay, then you are just on season 3. You finished season 3.
But the fact, again, that I don't remember it doesn't mean that I didn't watch it.
No, that's a big part of it. Going to Russia in the snow. It was very cool.
The Russians are always in everybody's mess, aren't they?
Apparently
Why are the Russians always getting into our mess?
In the 1980s.
Why can't they leave us alone?
Well, that was a very big Stranger Things theme.
Yeah.
Because it was set in the 80s.
Yeah.
Very Russia heavy.
Yes.
So, yeah, you have 2 seasons to catch up on,
it
seems.
You don't even remember the 80s because you were not born in the 80s.
It wasn't even an idea.
Yes, yeah.
But that being said,
yes.
Stranger Things just finished.
Yes, I've heard.
And they had their for real finale that happened just a couple of weeks ago.
I've heard that wasn't really the finale.
And that's what we're here to talk about. It's the best part. So this finale is a little over 2 hours long, I believe. And when it finishes, by the next day, fans had come up with an idea that there was going to be another episode coming, like a secret episode. And I have some theories about this. The finale was a choice. Okay, so without giving away spoilers, the writers of the show made a very conscious decision to lean more, I think, into the emotional piece, where it was just like, we're going to give you emotional closure, but we're really not going to close up a lot of the loops of these stories. So you're going to be left with a lot of questions, but your heartstrings might be tugged. Like, you might cry a couple of times.
I think that might drive me batty.
And I think it did drive a lot of the fans who have waited. I mean, from start to finish, this show was over 10 years for 5 seasons. And I wanted to talk to you about why I think maybe some of these fans had a hard time dealing with their grief or disappointment about this show, and therefore launched into what became huge viral sensation called Conformity Gate.
Conformity Gate.
Where they believed that the finale of the show was not the real finale, but that it was through the bad guy. His name is Vecna in the show. It was all through the bad guy's lens, and that the real finale was going to come next, and that was going to be like something that didn't conform to Vecna's view. So that's why it was called Conformity Gate.
Oh, okay.
So this finale was going to come, and it was going to come on, like, because everything comes on a holiday for Stranger Things, and so they thought it was going to be like on Eastern Orthodox, like an Eastern Orthodox holiday, that Christmas or something. I don't know anything, but it was in January. When I say...
So they projected a particular date they thought the Conformity Gate episode was going to drop.
And when I'm saying tens of thousands of videos being released every single day predicting this, and then going back into the finale and finding all of these Easter eggs that they thought proved their theory. And then I obviously, like, I knew that this wasn't going to happen, right? So I was like, you guys, there is no final episode. Like, I'm so sorry. The authors just didn't do a great job at closing up these loops. But people were very invested. So then this day comes and goes, no finale. Then people started saying, well, there's a documentary about Stranger Things coming out on January 12th. It's going to happen on that day. And they start going back into, in the 80s, there was this one movie that the finale was framed as a documentary, but it was actually integrating into the movies of the series or whatever. So they thought that they were going to do a Stranger Things documentary that was actually the finale of Stranger Things that closed up the loops better. I am sad to say that today that documentary came out. It was not the 9th episode of Stranger Things. So this just got me thinking about grief, about cults. It got me thinking about all kinds of things, confirmation bias. But how does that hit you? Did you even see any of this drama going on?
Very fortunately, I did not.
Lee.
Yes, no, I did not see a bit of this drama occur.
Did you even watch any of the videos that I shared of them going through and dissecting?
I did not.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
I do all of this work for myself, basically, truly. But there were videos where people were going frame by frame, checking the clock times in the 8th episode, which is the finale of Stranger Things, thinking it predicted the 9th.
Wow. Well, bless them.
Bless them.
Yes.
So seeing all these people go absolutely hysterical on social media got me thinking a lot about two things. Number one, grief, just how we deal with it. And how we try to make meaning out of things sometimes when we don't understand the endings of certain phases of our life, such as Stranger Things Season 5. But it also got me thinking about cults.
Cults.
And Lee, I read an entire book this weekend
because
based on this.
Because Stranger Things got you thinking about cults.
Because Stranger Things got me thinking
Fascinating.
about cults.
Yes. So what did you learn?
Okay. Have you ever heard of the book When Prophecy Fails?
No.
It's a very big book. It's actually where the term cognitive dissonance came from.
It's where that came from.
1,000% serious.
Really? Okay.
So there were several different psychologists in charge of this study in this book, but the most famous one is Leon Festinger.
Okay.
Where basically, this is the book that I read this weekend, and it was like 260 pages, but I got very into it. Basically, this book follows a small Chicago cult that believed that UFOs were going to come and capture them and bring them up to Venus. And the person in charge of this cult believed that she could read what she calls Venetian footprints, aka footprints on Venus's surface that predicted when these UFOs were going to come back. So this was taking place in the 1950s. So when these psychiatrists or psychologists found out about it, they decided to study this cult. Now, there is a lot of controversy around this study because it would not follow the ethics of today. So they went in undercover. And that, according to modern people, they think that them going undercover bolstered what this group thought was true by thinking that they were proselytizing people for real when they weren't.
Yeah.
So they weren't actually converting these people to the cult. They were just there to study the cult's thing. So what this cult book talks about, When Prophecy Fails, is that there were multiple times that these Venetian footprints didn't come through, right? So she said, hey, look up to the sky, the UFOs are coming tonight. And there were several times that she predicted these dates and nothing ever happened. But what they call deconfirmation, those deconfirmation experiences only served to bolster the faith of the people in this cult. And so this got me thinking of that for Stranger Things, because when they believed this 9th episode was coming out, they start looking for all of this meaning. The first day comes and goes. They double down and say it's coming out on documentary day. Today is documentary day. I don't know if there's going to be a second double down, but I'll be on the lookout.
And so how did the people in writing When Prophecy Fails speculate that the deconfirmation experiences led them to double down into their conviction?
So there were a couple of factors. Probably the most pertinent one, and what makes this way different than the Stranger Things people, where most people will move on with their lives from Stranger Things, whereas these people in the UFO cult really did double down for a long time, is costly commitment. So when there is a high cost to committing to a cult like this, where a lot of people gave up their belongings to be part of this, then once they're in, it's very difficult for them to get out.
Right.
Whereas with Stranger Things, like no one's making a deep, costly commitment about these predictions. And so it will be easier for the deconfirmation experiences to land.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
So it's in one way the old economic sunk cost fallacy.
Sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah. You've put this stuff in. It's hard to let go of, because if you let go of it, you've admitted you just wasted all that time, energy, and effort that you put into that. And so you'd rather believe it's going to come out some way.
You would rather search for meaning in other ways.
Right.
So on the first UFO failed salvation night, when the UFOs didn't come to get them, they took a long walk afterwards and they met a random stranger, and it was a very positive experience. And the way that they made meaning of that is that they said that that was an alien from the UFO. So instead of just saying this didn't happen, they double down and try to make meaning out of something else.
Right. Yeah. This reminds me of someone in my extended family that converted into a particular group that was very sectarian. And it cost her a lot with her family.
Okay.
And they were very angry with her for converting into this other group that thought that all of her family was going to go to hell because they weren't in the group. And so a lot of pain, a lot of strain. And so then she ended up, the way she doubled down was, as the rest of the family in subsequent decades softened up on a lot of their convictions in this new denomination she was in, she was having none of it. And it's like, no, I went through, she didn't voice this, but our interpretation was, she's like, I went through all this pain and all this grief, and I gave up a whole lot in relationships with my family to become a part of this group. Don't tell me now we were wrong.
Wow.
We absolutely were right. And you better believe it too, or you're going to go to hell, or at least there's a chance you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
So yeah, fascinating. I always thought that it was just a fascinating study in psychology of potential loss of things that you committed yourself to.
Yeah, and how her commitment to that cost her so much on the front end that it makes it less likely for her to ever leave on the back end.
Yeah, right.
And that's apparently, according to their research, true when it comes to like religious experiences or cult experiences. Yeah. And the other piece that I don't know if it relates to this person, but in the book, they said that social support is also what keeps people inside of cults or high controlling environments. Whereas if someone feels isolated inside of one of those environments, they're more likely to be able to leave when a deconfirmation experience happens. But the reason why there are ethical concerns around this is with these observers who were there, that bolstered some of these people
Social
into
connections.
thinking there was more social support than there actually was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about that a given, one way to think about beliefs is that, and maybe this is I don't know, I'd have to think about what I want to think about this myself. But, you could think about, are beliefs really first and foremost about claims about what we believe to be factually true, or do beliefs instead function as a means of social inclusion, as a way of community formation? And we're a community because we believe X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And so if you threaten X, Y, or Z, then you're threatening our relationships and you're threatening our community. Mm-hmm. So if X seems to be false, and no, we just have to figure out a way that X is not false, is actually quite right, because I value and prioritize the relationship I have. But if our relationship is dependent upon X, Y, and Z, then I can't have the relationship. And so I'm not giving it up.
My mother and I had a really interesting conversation last week where I was asking her about the church that I grew up in, which was very high control. And I asked her, why did you stay in it for so long if it was so high control? And she said, because there were so many great friends that they had.
Yeah.
And that the cost, because in my mind then it goes to, well, there are plenty of churches that I've been involved in and I'm not, but I'm still friends with those people. But in high control environments, that option doesn't exist. Like if the beliefs are the only things holding you together, then it's almost like if you stop believing that way, that you're not allowed to be friends anymore. To me, that's a cult vibe. I think that there are healthier options, and I don't know if this is what you're saying or not, where beliefs are not the only thing holding you together. Maybe like mutuality of love and respect could be. What do you think? Like right now, if I left my church, I could still be friends with everyone.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Yes. However, it's unlikely you would be as connected friends.
True.
If you left the community and went somewhere else.
True.
Because we're not deeply connected to people that we're not in some way present to on a regular basis.
I see what you're saying.
With a few exceptions, I suppose. But generally speaking, without ongoing social connection, we simply don't have social connection.
I think I might agree with that. Are you fully sold on your own idea?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But I think it's worth paying attention to the fact that what we believe to be very strong assertions about theological convictions, say, may have a whole lot more to do with a social grouping and the mechanisms of inclusion of who's in and who's out than it does to do with the truth.
With the actual truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us are that like disconnected from our social realities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
This also got me thinking about when it comes to disappointment, which I think is what a lot of people were feeling at the end of Stranger Things. I'm not trying to dog on Stranger Things, but I thought it was a very emotional, beautiful episode, but it's just interesting to see the aftermath. If everyone was super satisfied with this ending, no one would have predicted a secret 9th episode.
Yeah.
No one would have doubled down after that date came and went, then that the documentary would be a secret 9th episode. I think it's a lot to deal with disappointment. That got me thinking about an Anabaptist history class that I took. And I don't remember why we talked about this, but we talked about the Great Disappointment with the Millerites, where in the earlier mid-1800s in New York, this guy whose last name was Miller, he led kind of like a cult vibe, like a religious cult, where he believed that he had cracked the code and he knew when Jesus was going to come back. So he brings out all of these people to a field in New York and says, look up.
And he first, if I remember correctly, had them sell all their belongings and give away everything.
Gone.
And then go into the field.
Yes. All of them.
Yeah.
Goes out to the field. Nothing happens, right? Then they all go back and regroup and he says, I know what I did wrong. I messed up the BC and AD.
I know the blasted decimal point that I missed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then he gave a second date and he was like, it's the BC AD ratio thing I messed up. They go out for a second time. But this time, what's so crazy to me is that I think the first time it was like between 5,000 and 15,000 people. By the end, it was almost 100,000 people that went out to this field, even though the first time it didn't happen. 100,000 people go out to this field in New York.
Well, you've got to admire a guy who can admit his mistakes.
They look up to the sky. Literally nothing happens. And on that night, they started calling it the Great Disappointment, where the Millerites were like, we've been totally misled. But what was really fascinating is that, and I didn't realize this, but I remembered this from my Anabaptist Studies class, a guy named Hiram Edson was there at the Great Disappointment. And when he was walking away, he said that he looked across the field and saw a vision of Jesus.
Or
I'm not laughing because I don't think visions happen.
Or was that an alien from Venus?
Yeah, maybe an alien from Venus. But he looks across and he says that he sees Jesus going into the inner sanctuary of heaven. And he took this to mean that Jesus had come back, but just not in the way that they were expecting. Instead, he went into the inner sanctuary, and when he went into the inner sanctuary, his one goal was to decide who of all of humankind was able to come to heaven or not. And so now what that is called is the investigative judgment, and what is the Seventh-day Adventist tradition. And Hiram Edson started the Seventh-day Adventist tradition after this. And investigative judgment is basically starting in the 1840s. Jesus goes into the inner sanctuary. He still hasn't come out. And what he's doing right now, according to their tradition, is going through every single person's life that has ever lived and deciding whether or not they're in or out.
Okay, that last part of the story I did not know.
You didn't?
No. Or had forgotten.
And this is what's so fascinating to me is like, this is the making meaning out of something that is just deconfirmation.
Yeah. Right.
What do you do with that?
Well, I do several things. I do several things with it. I mean, one thing I do with it is, I think because I grew up in a church context in which people spoke with such authority that was not to be questioned. And it led to a lot of pain. I just am not very trustworthy of people who can't constantly have a posture of, I could be wrong.
I could be wrong, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I've known a good number of people through the years who will speak very confidently about what God has told them. And I'm kind of like, well, how do you, what's your operative way of distinguishing what God has told you versus your projection of what God might tell you? And so I'm always questioning that in that way.
In the When Prophecy Fails book, something they identified as what can lead to a high control environment and people buying in is specificity, though. And I wonder if that confidence attached to specificity is what garners attention and gets people really bought in. Because
specificity in this case being Jesus is going to return on such and so date.
But could also be specificity around, this is what God told me about, you know, who is in and who is out.
Right. Or that God told me all the elders of this church should step down while I appoint a new group of elders or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. That specificity actually helps, like, with the buy-in and the commitment from followers.
Yeah. Right.
Because it would be very difficult to have a cult around a leader who said, I could be wrong.
Right. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is you wouldn't make a good cult leader.
I wouldn't make a good cult leader. Yeah, well, I hope not. Yeah.
The Anabaptists get a shout out in this book.
Yes.
Okay, so this was also in my Anabaptist studies class, but I forgot.
Münster.
I forgot that in 1533 and 1534, a really big group of Anabaptists really thought that Jesus was coming back. And Jesus didn't. And the Anabaptist movement kind of flourished after that. Like, there was a lot of witnessing occurring.
But those Anabaptists kind of went crazy.
Were they the ones with the nudist colony?
Well, I don't think they had a nudist colony. What they did have was, so in this apocalyptic, the Lord is coming back. My recollection is that what they did have was, because they were under siege.
By who?
By whoever they had pushed out,
okay.
And other people were trying to take their city back.
Mm-hmm. And
so the town's under siege. And so people are hungry. There's not enough men to have children. And so they institute, the Lord's will being polygamy. And that if you were of marriageable age and weren't willing to become a wife, then you could be severely persecuted. And so there was a lot of, patriarchy of the worst kinds of sorts, strong authoritarianism, and enforced communalism. And so it was a really crazy community.
That was a wacky time in Anabaptist history.
Yeah, right. Well, and many people, I think, for the historians, and again, I haven't read this stuff in like 30 years, but the historians of Anabaptism, or church historians, typically, when they would look back at the Anabaptist, they would always tell the story of Münster.
Yeah.
As if this is who the Anabaptists were.
Yeah.
And there were lots of other fascinating kinds of Anabaptists that were very, very different. But anabaptism simply means, of course, to be baptized again. So they were rejecting infant baptism. And there were lots of kind of potential consequences and fruit that comes from saying we're not going to accept nominal forms of Christianity that are imposed by the state through infant baptism. And instead, we're going to say, let each person make a choice of whether or not they're going to follow this way of life, to take up this faith, to try to be discipled by Jesus of Nazareth and so forth. And so anabaptism simply means rebaptized, which was kind of a way of critiquing these people. That was an insult, right?
Critiquing the church-state system.
Yes, the Anabaptists were critiquing the church system, but the label Anabaptist was also a sort of pejorative label.
Oh, I see what
you're
saying.
Those rebaptizers.
Yes.
Right. But in any case, that could take a number of different shapes. Münster's a really ugly form of it, and then there were others like Menno Simons that was a much more, in my mind, compelling, beautiful vision of the Anabaptist movement.
Yeah, we're just always so positive about Anabaptists, and I wanted to give some nuance. When I read it in the book, I was like, yeah, I want to add this part.
Yeah.
Because we tend to just be very pro-Anabaptist because both of us have studied in that world.
Yeah. Well, and even we're getting a little geeky theologically, but the so-called, apocalypticism that's in a lot of this stuff, apocalypticism can lead to incredibly fruitful, fascinating ethic, or it can lead to wackiness. And so in Münster, it led to some wackiness. In the Millerites, it led to some wackiness. In others, it has led to some incredible commitments to a alternative way of life that is beautiful and just and peaceable and compelling.
I mean, the whole Gospel of Matthew shows Jesus as an apocalyptic prophet.
Right. But I think that, as far as the conversation in this episode that we're doing right now, I think that the wacky Münsterites, Anabaptists, that points us again to the way in which people speaking so confidently, authoritatively about what they think is going to happen, how a lot of people can get sucked in. It can do a lot of damage.
Can get whipped into some hysteria.
Yeah.
I would be very curious to know who originated Conformity Gate, because they must have done so in such a compelling way that it preyed on people's disappointment with the show and just whipped them up into a frenzy where thousands and thousands and thousands of people then, like I had a group thread going with some of my friends who watched the show. And I said, if you had to bet $1,000 today on whether or not a show is going to come out on the 9th or whatever day the original date was, who would bet $1,000 of their own dollars and who wouldn't? And it was really fascinating to see how the majority of people would bet $1,000.
Really?
Yeah, only one person wouldn't. I mean, and then me, obviously, but I tried to stay neutral.
How fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting to wonder, would Conformity Gate have been possible apart from social media algorithms and AI,
Probably not.
Yeah, I would imagine not, but that doesn't mean that such wackiness of 100,000 people showing up in a field in the 1800s thinking Jesus is about to return tonight, that happened long before social media. So there's something psychological about it and social about it, not merely technical about it.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend if anyone wants to nerd out, the When Prophecy Fails book was very, very interesting. And it's public domain now, so I was able to read it on my computer, like on a PDF. But I do want to also name, just for this, the ethical concerns that people had about it, which is that did they mess with the experiment by being part of the experiment without naming it, which is, I think, very valid to be able to say. And
one other kind of category that we've kind of hinted at that is helpful to me is one Anabaptist writer, James William McClendon, when he talks about what he calls the little b Baptist theology, so we don't mean by that Southern Baptist as much as the Anabaptist tradition. He says that one of the things that distinguishes that tradition is fallibilism, and I find that very helpful. I don't know what that is. So to be infallible means you are without error, right? And so he says that the large part of the Believers Church tradition, the Little B Baptist tradition, fallibilism, that is a commitment to always saying we could be wrong. And that in each new generation you take up again the work and say, where could we be wrong? And that you don't assume that what your forefathers have told you is true, but that they could have been wrong too. And so there's difficulties and problems with that as well, because it oftentimes plays fast and loose with tradition, which tradition can be very, very helpful, but it can also be debilitating, and it can also be destructive. And so but I think fallibilism is trying to be honest about our own finitude, our own mortality, our own sinfulness, our own ways in which we have an agenda in being right.
Yep.
And fallibilism says we've got to question all of that stuff and say, I could be wrong, I could be wrong, I could be wrong, and you could be wrong.
And you could be wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's a great actually place to close.
Let's
On the word fallibilism.
on fallibilism.
I guess I wish that it was just called fallibility.
Fallibility, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Fallibility, like the ability to be phallus.
Yeah. to be false. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
To know that you're false.
The ability to be false.
Yeah.
Versus fallibilism. I'm hearing cannibalism.
Yeah. No cannibalism, just fallibilism.
Exactly. So sending love to all the Stranger Things who are dealing with their grief tonight. I hope you feel better being compared to a UFO cult.